All right, how's everyone doing? I'm Rich CELENZA. Thanks for tuning into the Rich CELENZA Show. WTF are you talking about? So what I want to get into today is actually, I'm not exactly sure what I would title this. I've been throwing around a lot of different things, but it's basically making an impression on others, how significant that is. And I don't think a lot of people realize that, or they don't want to admit it. And I get it. I think with society a lot of times, we've been kind of taught, or I don't know how to explain this, but a lot of times by saying you want to impress others almost devalues who you are or how you perceive yourself, which is ridiculous. And that's what I want to get into today, because I don't think people realize the power of being able to impress others, what that can install in their future life or what they're doing right now. Because I think a lot of us are almost, and I've been in that mindset, like I could care less about others. I could give a shit about what they think about me. I'm going to do whatever I want to do. And I'm really, I get it. I agree to, sometimes I still agree to that as well. But the reality is, especially for younger people, they have to realize, though, if they want to get certain things or accomplish certain goals, they're going to have to learn to impress others. I don't care who you think you are, unless maybe you're a millionaire. Maybe you're born into a lot of wealth. But for the average Joe or the average person out there who's struggling, they've got to do certain things to impress others, to either give them the opportunity, or basically to give them the opportunity that they're looking for. And if you look at your life, a lot of times, you may not want to admit it, you've been already probably constantly trying to impress others throughout your life. I would say when we're younger, basically it starts off with our parents. You're trying to impress them when you're younger. You even then when you start school, again, you're probably trying to impress your parents, or at least do things that make them happy, which probably would include getting good grades, and then that would flip into you being able to get maybe better toys, maybe getting to do certain things you want to do in your life, going to the movies, shopping, playing certain sports, and by getting good grades, you get, on the good graces of your parents. And you also want to impress your teachers, because a lot of times if you impress them, they're going to give you better grades. So I think that's kind of where it stems from. And then as you get older, still school, I'd say even in high school, if you play a lot of sports like I did, the truth is, for you to be a starter, you had to impress your coach. If you don't impress them, you're not starting. You also have to impress your other fellow athletes if you're on a team sport. And if you play an individual sport, you got to impress yourself, which I'm going to get into a little more down the line, because when I played a lot of sports like tennis, wrestling, I even boxed. I didn't box, though, like in tournaments or anything. I would just box. One of my closest buddies was a boxer. We'd box. I'd go to the gym with him. But I did play individual sports pretty hardcore, like I just mentioned, tennis. I even went to Nick Bollettieri tennis camp, and everybody there wanted to impress Nick Bollettieri because he was rated one of the best tennis coaches, not only in the United States or North America, but the entire world. But I realized something about myself while I was there, that I wasn't really interested in playing tennis professionally. But I also wrestled many years, and that's obviously a one-on-one sport. I'm not talking about wrestling MMA, WW. What is that, World Wrestling Federation, or WWF? I don't know. You know the guys like The Rock and those guys. I'm not talking about that wrestling. I'm talking, high school wrestling. So, back to impressing others. So I really loved impressing my coaches. And then if you want to become a captain, which I did, you want to keep impressing, obviously, not only your coaches, you're representing your school, which included obviously the principal. It included other teachers. It included your fellow teammates, your squad, all these things. And then obviously when you get out of high school and start to go in college, you are same structure. You're there if you want to get good grades. You're going to have to prove to your professors or your teachers and everyone else that you're there hopefully to get good grades and start a career. After you graduate, you're most likely either your parents, you might be if you're on a scholarship, you really got to keep that going, but you are structured, or you should have the mindset again that you are constantly trying to impress others, even though you may not look at it like that. And as life goes on, you want to start a career, you want to get a job, You're going to write a resume most likely, or you're going to say you don't go to college. You just start right out of high school getting a job. If you want a job, you're going to impress your boss. So you get the job even before you start to work there, either by a discussion, by an interview. Once you do start, you have to impress them to show them you deserve this job. And if you want to move up in the company, you got to constantly be showing, your value. And I don't think a lot of people realize how important that is. And that's what I'm talking about in this podcast. And it not only goes to when you're growing up through school or through work, I think also you have to realize a lot of times if you are married or you're in a relationship or you have a girlfriend or whatever, the reality is you're trying to impress the girl you're with, or a guy, I don't know, either one, whatever you're with, or a girl with another girl, and you want to show them that, you value yourself, and if they're with you, or that if you're together, that it's, you value that. And no matter what anyone tells you, most likely you had impressed somebody for them to be attracted to you a lot of times. That doesn't mean, they may be attracted to you. I shouldn't say that. If they see you across the room, they find you attractive, or they may fool around with you. But for someone a lot of times to marry you or get into a committed relationship, you had to impress them, and vice versa, usually, right? Especially men. If you're looking at a lot of women, there were certain things that said, hey, she really impressed me because, wow, she's really smart. And, wow, I see the way she talks to people, or the way she carries herself. Wow, she comes from a great family, or, wow, she has a great job. All these type of things. And again, you may not even be, realizing these things, but it comes down to impressing one another to a certain degree. And then you may have a family, which I don't think sometimes we realize as parents is the impressions we make on others, especially our kids. And, I just saw a study which kind of was funny, that a lot of kids, they were interviewing little ones like 3, 4, 5-year-olds, mainly 3 and 4, I think. And they were asking them, how old are their parents? And in their mindset, a lot of them were saying, oh, they're 15 years old, they're 16, they're 18. And then they would say, no, your parents are 30 or 40 years old. They were like, oh my God. They didn't even realize how old their parents were, which I look back and I was thinking, wow, I wonder how old I thought my parents were. But back to my parents, or maybe your parents or our other family members, who's making the biggest impression on us a lot of times, I think, is who we start to value or become attracted to the most. And I don't think we realize that. Even as we get older, I don't think a lot of people realize that when you were younger, being programmed from 0 to whatever, 5, 10 years old, you gravitated to certain parents. It could be your mom, your dad. It could be a certain sibling more than the others. It could be uncles, aunts, grandparents, whatever the case may be. I was around my immigrant grandparents. I didn't necessarily gravitate towards my grandfather. He was very rough. He's from Naples. And, I think he loved me as a grandchild. I knew I wasn't his favorite. And I'm not going to say, I wasn't the type of guy to say he's my favorite. But now that I look back, now that I'm going on 50 years old, I probably have not the most, but I have so much in common with him that it blows me away now that I'm older. And also, I think I realize when you meet your grandparents, a lot of times they're a lot older. You don't know what they were in their youth. So my grandfather, I was fortunate enough because my mother had me at a very young age, and her mother had her at a young age, and her mother had her at a young age. So I got to spend a lot of time with my great-grandparents. Even my kids got to spend a lot of time with my their great-great-grandmother, because she lived to almost 94 years old. But I realized too, back to impressing, my uncles on both sides of my family were much different, and I was impressed by both of them. Some financially, by what they had. Others by attitude and by strength and by physical power. All these different types of things impressed me. And then when I had kids, I used to kind of get in a situation where people would say, well, I lived in Orlando, Florida, so I was always kind of having a blast with my kids, either at Disney, Universal, SeaWorld, all these. But then on the other end, I was very strict. And people would be like, wow, you talk to your kids like they're adults. And I wanted to make sure that my children knew exactly, who I was. I didn't want to have a watered-down version of myself. I did not want to have a phony, bullshitty type kind of like, I don't want to say cloud over me. I just wanted my kids to understand that, if something ever happened to me, they always saw my true self, if that makes sense. And I think a lot of parents, I don't know if they have that. I think a lot of parents pretend to be something that they're not, or they pretend their past, they never did anything. I've done podcasts on that, or they never got in trouble, or all this other bullshit. But I 100%, I wasn't looking to impress my kids by making things look a certain way that they weren't, if that makes sense. I wanted them to know the world they were living in with me and the reality of it, the ups and downs. And my kids were fortunate when I was younger. I had kids younger. I had a lot more money, and then I fell on harder times later in life, like a lot of people do. And I didn't want to put the stress on them by any means, but I wanted them to know, even when I went through a divorce, the situation that I was living in, and that I knew that they were going to be going through, because I went through a divorce at a young age. And I didn't want to fluff it. I didn't want to bullshit it. I also did not want to make it hurtful or take sides or any of that. But I just wanted them to know exactly how things were. And now that my daughters are in their 20s, I've had discussions with one more than the other, but we've discussed things, and one of the things she always says to me is, thank you for being always so honest. You've always been, they knew that I had always the best intentions for them, even though I didn't bullshit them, I guess is what I'm trying to say in a nutshell. And I didn't, a lot of times I think too, is we try to impress people, including our children or others, and it's kind of phony, right? A lot of times, and I see that with families, especially, or even in the workplace, where you kind of make yourself look like you're working a lot harder than you do, or you're a lot smarter than you are. The thing I really want to just get to on this podcast is, for one, try to learn how to impress yourself, I think, before you try to learn to impress anyone else, and be honest about it. Because I think the one thing that a lot of people miss is they end up becoming something, or they fall into something where they're always on the other end trying to impress people, but it's really not who they are. And you can kind of see that phoniness just come out so quickly. And I'm not telling you to go out there and be an asshole. What I'm trying to say is, one is, be as honest with yourself as possible. And if you do want certain things in life, be genuine and honest about that with yourself, and then with others as well. A lot of times just showing vulnerability is a way to impress people. You don't always have to be the smartest guy in the room. You don't have to be the guy who's the know-it-all, the guy who's the strongest in the gym if you're working out, or the toughest guy, or all these things. Now, I'm not saying to go in there and be a pussy, but if there are things you don't know, admit you don't know them, right? I think a lot of times we get in a position where, like, if we show that we don't know certain things, we're going to come off stupid, or we're going to come off not as valuable. And I don't see that to be the case at all, especially as I got older. I definitely would respect people more, or if I'm talking about something and they don't know what I'm talking about, to stop me and say, Rich, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Because I do that all the time. I stop people and say, listen, I don't know what you're talking about here, or I don't know how to do that, or this is way over my head. Now, you may look at that and say, Rich, I don't think you should do that in a work environment, because you could lose your job maybe, or they'll look at you stupid. No, because what I think is stupid is you constantly, or a lot of people, pretending they know all these things. They don't. Then eventually it comes out that you don't know what you're doing. It's kind of like lying on a resume, or when you go and lie, you go to an interview and you're lying and telling them, all the things you can do and all the things you know about and all these different types of things, and then they hire you and then you look like an asshole, right? So there's a right way and a wrong way, obviously, to impress people as well. So I just thought I would get quickly into that. I'm not going to get really long-winded in this, but really try to figure yourself out. And when you do meet people, or you do something in your life, so I basically teach this confidence program where I try to help men find the woman or women of their dreams. And my number one thing is just be genuine when meeting them. That's very impressive. Most men lie, manipulate, bullshit, even their finances, their jobs, what they do, what they've done, all this type of shit, or what they're going to do when most likely they know they're not going to do it, to try to pull all these things to impress a woman. That's one of the worst things I believe you could do. If you're honest, again, and genuine, you're already going to be leaps and bounds above everyone. And one of the biggest things I think you could just like put a great impression on people is being yourself and being comfortable in your own skin and knowing what you're talking about and understanding what you don't know as well. Because too many people pretend to know a lot more than they know. They also pretend to be right a lot more than they're wrong. And I'm going to tell you right now, most likely you're wrong as much as you're right. You just don't want to admit that. Or you may not even realize that, because I discussed this in my other podcast. If you were as successful as you think you are, or as right, if you were right on most of your decisions, most of the situations you'll end up in your life, a lot of times, you would have succeeded or gotten a lot further. I think, a lot of times. And that's not saying that's a bad thing, but you may have invested in certain things. It could be real estate, businesses, yourself, where you have failed. That doesn't mean you're a bad person, but I'm just saying you have to be honest with that approach to say, wow, a lot of things I do or I may believe may not be right for me, or may have not panned out the way I thought they were going to. So again, that's just something I thought I would throw in there. But when it comes to women, please, to impress a woman, a lot of women understand that a lot of guys out there don't make a lot of money. And they understand that they're struggling like they are as well. Or they understand they've had hard times like they have. If you're honest and you talk about certain things, that doesn't mean you're complaining. You're definitely going to make a huge impression on them. And if you're looking to make new friends too, regardless if it's at the gym or if it's at work or whatever, have the confidence to say, hey, you need help here, or can I help you here, or whatever. To make an impression a lot of times is just to help somebody. It's not always to prove something, if that makes sense. You don't always have to prove your value, but helping somebody else raise their value is a way to impress people. So that's something to think about as well. But I'm going to wrap it up there. If you want to get a chance, you might want to check out my Mastering Self-Confidence program. It's all on my website, richcelenza.com. And I'm on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook as well. But yeah, get it out of your head that impressing people too makes you or this is what I think happens too real quick, is you kind of pick and choose the people you think you should impress to get the things you want. But you don't realize a lot of times that you may be impressing people. And I don't mean you have to go out. Let me make this very clear. You don't have to go out and constantly be in the mindset that you have to help, or show your value to every person you meet, or kind of be a show-off or any of that. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if you carry yourself a certain way and you value yourself and others, they're going to look at you differently. And a lot of times those people may introduce you to other people, right? You may have, you don't realize sometimes you may just be at a party, you think that's an average Joe, and you're talking about something and they're like, holy shit, this guy knows what he's talking about. I got to introduce him to another person that I know. And that may be the person that you should be talking to that could help your career or can help you succeed in doing whatever you're trying to do. A lot of times I think we look at certain people and just judge them and go, who's this asshole? Like blow him off, or not talk to him, or not try to, I'm not saying you got to impress him, but you kind of you're just very relaxed and you kind of judge everybody a certain way. Try to realize a lot of times you're going to meet the best people through other people. So treat them with a lot of respect. And I think a lot of times that'll work out a lot better for people than constantly judging them. That's just my theory. All right, I'm going to wrap it up there. If you get a chance, again, check out my YouTube. I've been putting up a lot of things fitness related on there. If you like anything with working out, I've been doing different things regarding all different workouts I've done. I do a voiceover with them, and I've also been doing a lot of different things when working out. That's pretty unique, I think. All right, take care, and if you're traveling, safe travels.